You have won 2 Super Bowls as a head coach. You coached 10 players who went on to be enshrined in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. You have a postseason winning percentage better than any active coach in NFL history. Your teams went toe-to-toe with legends like Don Shula, Chuck Noll, Tom Landry, and Bill Walsh, and you beat most of them. And when the Hall of Fame finally opens its doors for you, when they tell you that you are almost a shoo-in, you find out on live television that you didn't make it. Not with a phone call, not with a private conversation. You find out by watching 2 TV personalities get the announcement on national TV while you sit at home. That is the story of Tom Flores. And if you've never heard of him, that is exactly the problem. Tom Flores was not supposed to be here. He was born on March 21, 1937 in Sanger, California. His father, Tomas Flores Sr., had crossed the border from Durango, Mexico as a 12-year-old boy. He couldn't read, he couldn't write, he picked crops in the fields of California's San Joaquin Valley just to survive. Tom's mother, born in California to immigrants from Jalisco, Mexico, only made it to the 8th grade before she had to go to work. The family had nothing, no running water in the house, no money to spare. Tom picked crops in those same fields as a child, grapes, fruit, whatever the season brought. But Tom Flores had something those fields couldn't take away. He had a football. He excelled at Sanger High School. He went on to play quarterback at Fresno City College, then earned an academic scholarship to the University of the Pacific. He was a student council president. He was studying to be a teacher. His mother wanted him to come home after graduation and build a stable, steady life. Then, pro football came calling, or at least something that looked like pro football. The Canadian Football League's Calgary Stampeders cut him in 1958. The NFL's Washington Redskins cut him in 1959. He was playing for the semi-pro Bakersfield Spoilers, wondering if his football dream was dead. Then a brand new league called the American Football League gave Tom Flores one more shot. I had never heard of the AFL, Flores later admitted. I had no idea what they were talking about. He beat out 10 other quarterbacks in training camp. He made the roster of the expansion Oakland Raiders in 1960, the very first season in team history. And in that very first Raiders game ever played on September 11, 1960, against the Houston Oilers at San Francisco's Kezar Stadium, Tom Flores was the starting quarterback. He was the first ever Hispanic starting quarterback in professional football history. Think about that for a moment. In one generation, a family went from picking grapes in the California fields to breaking barriers in professional sports. His mother cried when he told her he was giving up teaching to chase a football dream. She could not have imagined what her son was about to become. Over 6 seasons in Oakland, Tom Flores threw for over 11,000 yards and 92 touchdowns. His teammates called him the Iceman because no matter how chaotic things got, no matter how big the moment was, Tom Flores never panicked. He was the calmest man on the field. He survived, he competed, he endured. And then a disease almost ended everything. In 1962, Flores missed the entire AFL season battling tuberculosis. Some of team owner Al Davis's advisors told him to move on, cut Flores, sign someone new. Davis refused. He kept his quarterback. That loyalty between Flores and the Raiders would last decades. By the late 1960s, Tom Flores' playing career was winding down. He bounced from the Raiders to the Buffalo Bills to the Kansas City Chiefs. He became a backup, a veteran in the locker room. But in 1969, he was on the Kansas City Chiefs roster when they went to Super Bowl IV. They won. Tom Flores had his first Super Bowl ring as a player, though he barely played. He was a backup quarterback watching from the sideline. It was not the stage he was born for, but it was preparation for something bigger. He retired as a player after the 1970 season. He had played every single season of the AFL's 10-year existence. He was one of only 20 men who could say that. Coaching came naturally to him. He joined the Buffalo Bills staff in 1971, then returned to Oakland under Hall of Fame head coach John Madden in 1972. For 7 years, Flores coached the Raiders' receiving corps. He tutored players like Hall of Famer Fred Biletnikoff and the legendary Cliff Branch. Those Raiders teams were dominant. From 1972 to 1977, they made 5 straight AFC championship games. And when they finally won it all in Super Bowl XI after the 1976 season, beating the Minnesota Vikings, Tom Flores was on the sideline as an assistant coach. Ring number 2. Player, assistant, now came the moment that would define him forever. In 1979, John Madden retired. Al Davis chose Tom Flores to replace him. The press was skeptical. Critics wondered if this quiet, calm man could fill the enormous shoes of the most colorful, loud, and celebrated coach in Raiders history. Tom Flores said nothing. He just went to work. His first season as head coach, the Raiders went 9-7. Respectable, a learning year. Then came 1980, and 1980 changed NFL history forever. The 1980 Raiders were not supposed to be here either. They didn't win their division. They had to fight their way into the playoffs as a wild card team, meaning they had to win 4 straight road playoff games just to reach the Super Bowl. No wild card team had ever won it all before. Not once. Then their starting quarterback, Dan Pastorini, broke his leg in Week 5. Enter Jim Plunkett. Plunkett was 33 years old. He had been cut, forgotten, almost done. He threw 5 interceptions in his first start after taking over for Pastorini. It looked like the season was over. But Tom Flores believed in Jim Plunkett the way Al Davis had once believed in Tom Flores. Plunkett recovered. He led the Raiders to 9 wins in their last 11 games, and then, quietly, scrappily, defiantly, they won 4 playoff games in a row, including a 27-10 demolition of the Philadelphia Eagles in Super Bowl XV. Jim Plunkett was named Super Bowl MVP. Tom Flores became the first minority head coach in NFL history to win a Super Bowl. Not bad for a couple of grape pickers. That is what Raiders assistant Sam Bogosian, who also grew up in California's Central Valley, leaned over and whispered to Flores with a minute left in the game. With the Raiders safely ahead, Bogosian turned to his head coach and said, "Not bad for a couple of grape pickers." And Flores smiled. Not bad at all. But Tom Flores wasn't finished. The Raiders moved from Oakland to Los Angeles in 1982. A new city, same coach, same standard. In 1982, a players' strike shortened the regular season to just 9 games. The Raiders still went 8-1, the best record in the entire AFC. Tom Flores was named AFC Coach of the Year by United Press International and the Football Writers Association. Then, in 1983, the Raiders put together one of the most dominant seasons in franchise history. 12 wins, 4 losses, a freight train of a football team, with Marcus Allen at running back, Jim Plunkett at quarterback, and some of the most feared defenders in the NFL. When they got to Super Bowl XVIII in Tampa, they faced the Washington Redskins, the highest-scoring team in NFL history at that point. Washington had destroyed the Los Angeles Rams 51-10 in the playoffs. They were the defending NFC champions. They were supposed to be unstoppable. The Raiders stopped them. The final score was 38-9. It was, at that time, the largest margin of victory in Super Bowl history. Tom Flores told his team at halftime with a 19-point lead, "No let-up, no let-up. Just 30 more minutes of Raiders football, and it's ours." There was no let-up. 2 Super Bowls, 2 Lombardi trophies, a postseason record of 8 wins and 3 losses, a regular season record of 83 wins and 53 losses across 9 seasons in Oakland and Los Angeles, a coaching winning percentage of .610 in the regular season, higher than Hall of Famers Bill Walsh, Tom Landry, and Chuck Noll. He coached 10 players who went to the Pro Football Hall of Fame. He guided Jim Plunkett to the Comeback Player of the Year award in 1980. He watched Marcus Allen win Offensive Player of the Year in 1985 and NFL MVP the same year. He coached Lester Hayes to the Defensive Player of the Year award in 1980. Only Chuck Noll had won more Super Bowls as a head coach at that time. And Tom Flores is the only person ever to win a Super Bowl ring as a player, as an assistant coach, and as a head coach. He and Mike Ditka are the only two human beings in history to have accomplished that. So, when the Pro Football Hall of Fame started reviewing his resume, the answer should have been simple. It was not. Tom Flores became eligible for the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 1999, and then the waiting began. Year after year, the call didn't come. Men with fewer Super Bowls, worse winning percentages, and shorter careers walked into Canton, Ohio and received their gold jackets. And Tom Flores, the two-time Super Bowl champion, the barrier breaker, the quiet man who changed history, waited. He said nothing publicly. He stayed calm. He was the Iceman. That was who he was. Then came 2020. The NFL was celebrating its 100th season. To mark the occasion, the Hall of Fame announced an expanded centennial class, 20 inductees instead of the usual number. Among those 20 spots, 2 were specifically reserved for coaches. Flores was named a finalist. Hall of Fame President David Baker reportedly told him personally that he would be an almost shoo-in. Flores was 82 years old at the time. He understood what this moment meant. This could be his last real chance. He was not in Atlanta for the announcement. The finalists waited to be called. The 2 coaches chosen would be announced live on national television during the NFL playoff games. Flores turned on the TV. He watched Bill Cowher's name appear on screen. Bill Cowher, who won 1 Super Bowl to Flores's 2. Cowher, who was a prominent studio analyst on CBS's NFL pregame show. Then Jimmy Johnson's name appeared. Jimmy Johnson, who won 2 Super Bowls, yes, but entirely in college coaching and the NFL, with no playing career to speak of in the pros. No call came for Tom Flores. Not on TV, not on his phone, not even a private notification to tell him it wasn't his year. He just watched it happen on live television. I turned to my wife and said, "I'm bounced, I'm out," Flores recalled. He later told ESPN he was kind of disgusted by the manner of the snub. Not just that he didn't get in, but that nobody called him. Nobody gave him the courtesy of a private conversation. He sat at home watching 2 men, both of whom happened to be prominent network television personalities, receive the honor he had waited 20 years for. The reaction across the NFL world was immediate and furious. 2 United States congressmen, Representative Jim Costa of California and Representative Darren Soto of Florida, introduced an official resolution in the U.S. House of Representatives urging the Hall of Fame to induct Tom Flores. Former Raiders players were publicly outraged. NFL media personalities called the decision indefensible. Even veteran Hall of Fame selectors were reportedly stunned by the outcome. The criticism pointed at one uncomfortable truth. Bill Cowher and Jimmy Johnson were both featured as hosts on major network NFL pregame shows. Cowher on CBS, Johnson on Fox. The Hall of Fame president had personally made the announcements live on air during those networks' playoff broadcasts. It was great television. It was spectacular publicity. But it was not justice. One senior source told ESPN that the Hall Committee may have been suffering from what they called Raider fatigue, with several former Raiders players and coaches having been inducted in recent years, as if the sins of a franchise could be counted against the achievements of a coach who never did anything wrong. John Madden, a Hall of Famer himself, was on the special committee that year, but he was unable to attend in person and participated by phone. Sources said his connection was poor, and he barely weighed in on Flores' candidacy. The man who had once promoted Tom Flores to head coach, the man who had given him his first opportunity, he couldn't even be heard clearly when it mattered most. It was almost too painful to believe. 2021 arrived. Tom Flores was still waiting. He was 83 years old now. He had fought tuberculosis. He had been cut 3 times before finding his league. He had coached 2 Super Bowl champions. He had broken barriers that no one had broken before him. He had waited and waited and waited, with the grace and dignity that had earned him the name the Iceman. On February 6, 2021, the day before Super Bowl 51, the Pro Football Hall of Fame announced its class of 2021. Tom Flores got the call. The Raiders arranged a fake documentary interview at his home in Indian Wells, California. He grabbed his cane and shuffled to the front door, and it was Hall of Fame President David Baker standing there to tell Tom Flores that his wait was finally over. On August 8, 2021, at Tom Benson Hall of Fame Stadium in Canton, Ohio, Tom Flores stepped to the podium to accept his gold jacket and his place in football immortality. He was 84 years old. He made a joke about being the second speaker of the night because at 84, he needed to be in bed by 9 o'clock. The crowd laughed, they cheered, they gave him the standing ovation that should have come years earlier. And then he told them about the grape fields, about his father who crossed the border at 12 years old and worked the land his whole life, about his mother who only went to the 8th grade, about the day he told her he was going to be a professional football player instead of a teacher, and she cried, not from joy, but from fear of what an uncertain life might mean. And then he remembered Super Bowl 15, the moment Bohosian leaned over and whispered those words. Not bad for a couple of great pickers. He paused. Not bad at all. The stadium was quiet for just a moment. Then the roar came. Tom Flores is more than a football coach. He is the first Latino starting quarterback in professional football history. He is the first minority head coach to win a Super Bowl. He is the only person in NFL history to win a Super Bowl ring as a player, an assistant coach, and a head coach, a feat he shares only with Mike Ditka. He coached teams to a postseason record of 8-13, a winning percentage of .727. Only Vince Lombardi has a better playoff winning percentage among coaches with at least 10 postseason games. He broke barriers at every stage of his career, not because he was trying to make history, but because he was simply too good to be stopped. He went from picking grapes in the fields of California's Central Valley to winning football's greatest prize, twice. And for 22 years, the Hall of Fame made him wait. In the year 2020, when they chose Bill Cowher and Jimmy Johnson over him, it was not just a football decision. It was a statement about who gets to be celebrated, who gets to be seen, who gets to be remembered, and the NFL got it wrong. But here is what cannot be taken from Tom Flores. The records remain, the rings remain, the history remains. The children in Sanger, California who look at Tom Flores Stadium when they go to school every morning, they know what his name means. The Latino community that watched him break through walls that had never been broken before, they know who he is. Tom Flores did not become great because the Hall of Fame said so. The Hall of Fame became more credible because it finally let him in. That is the difference between a legacy and a certificate. Tom Flores built a legacy. Canton just caught up. The next time someone tells you that the Hall of Fame gets it right, remember Tom Flores. Remember the man who won Super Bowls in Oakland and Los Angeles, who coached 10 Hall of Famers, who beat Shula and Walsh and Landry and Knoll, who did it all as a kid from the grape fields of California, a kid whose father couldn't read, whose mother could barely write, whose family had nothing except the will to work and the hope that something better was possible. Remember the man who waited 22 years to hear his name called. And remember this, sometimes the most disrespected man in the room is the most qualified person there. Tom Flores proved that. He always did.